listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Welcome back to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today. We have another show lineup for you all today. We have two special guests today. We have J. Kevin Dolan and Peter H. Calfee. They are two special people that you want to be not just study their life, because they don't just have great gems, but they have like really amazing wisdom. Because I had a chance to read up on them and talk to them a little bit before we got on air. But first and foremost, let me cut to the chase. They're co-authors of a book that you need to get a copy of. It's called Hijacked, Our Republic, Unless We Can Save It. And they have it right there on the screen if you're watching us online. And Kevin, let's start with him. Kevin is a former U.S. Air Force pilot, American Airlines captain, and Walton MBA who built financial firms for pilots. Peter, a Stanford and Chicago Booth graduate, is a retired CPA, CFP, and former chair of the CFP Board of Examiners with deep experience in regulation, education, and nonprofits. Together, as I've run out of breath and talking about the details of their bio, they together are delivering a bold warning to you, the audience, that our republic is being quietly hijacked from within. And I know that's going to be a clickbait right there, where people will be sending emails like, what is this about? Well, that's why we have people on the show. And if you want more information, they have a website, HijackedOurRepublic.com. Again, that's HijackedOurRepublic.com. First and foremost.
Hijacked ED. Hijacked ED.
Yes.
HijackedOurRepublic.com. Yes.
So once again, I want to welcome you both to the show. I know I had to speed up with that introduction, but we finally made it. How you guys doing today?
We're doing great. Peter's around. Did you play a little golf today? Or
I did play a little golf today. Yes, I did.
So it's a good day for Peter. Me, I've been working in the yard. So anyway, we're all set here. We're excited about what we put together. It took us 3.5 years, basically. Now it's 3 years it was published. And now we've been doing some podcasts to get the word out. And it's a fundamental, the name of the book, we think, says most of it. Hijacked Our Republic, Unless We Can Save It, is the full title. And it gets at what's going on right now. And the chapters, I think, highlight the process. First chapter is, there's an introduction, then there's critical thinking, then education, then religion, faith, values is one chapter, then history. And with those formative chapters, you're then ready to talk about political systems and economic systems. And then we draw conclusions.
And Shemaiah, the inspiration for this really comes out of a 47-page book called Common Sense. And it was written in 1775 by Thomas Paine, anonymously. No one knew if he had written it. And 500,000 copies were sold in 13 colonies that had 2.3 million people. So you can see the power of the word, and particularly those copies that were loaned or posted on walls in bars and taverns and so forth. The entire country read 4 different little small pamphlets put together to make common sense about what was going wrong with the largest empire in the world, really trashing 13 colonies and taking away their rights and hijacking what they set out to do. And so we drew upon that and drew upon that inspiration to really provide us what do we see going wrong today? And we began to talk month after month after month and connect the dots to really conclude that without critical thinking has disappeared from our discourse. We cannot sit and have a conversation like as we are having right now without someone getting irritated, standing up from the table and saying, I can't talk to you, and leave. And that's happened to us hundreds of times across the country in the last few years. And we want to identify, wait a second, that's not what it's about. Discourse and positive reinforcement, strengthening, as Kevin says, of the fabric of our society. And if we can't have civil discourse, we fall apart as a country. And they're talking about it, and every night on the news, someone's talking about that. We're going to break apart as a nation if we're not careful. So hence our inspiration to try to identify at least what were problems then, how did they happen, and what are the problems today, and what are possible solutions.
Excellent.
And Kevin, I want to ask you this. When you look at your experience, U.S. Air Force, thank you for your service. You flew for American Airlines. You also helped found the Allied Pilots Federal Credit Union. How did all these different experiences help shape your perspective in bringing facts to this book alongside with your partner on this project?
Well, first I should mention that we met at a Veterans Day luncheon at a club that we're both members of. And Peter was in the Army, and so he served the country too. And we both were honorably discharged as we got out of the military. So we both served the country. A lot of people don't really understand what it means to be in the military in terms of the commitment. The commitment is like signing a contract that says payable upon activity. If someone wants to take my life, that may be the recourse of what happens for my commitment to be participating in the military. And so some of the greatest people I know are people that are selfless. They put the wants, needs of society ahead of their own, and in that process, the military is to be highly thought of and acclaimed for that service, etc., as you kindly made a statement referring to that. So when we participated in the military, it was a function of our responsibility to our country. Now, when you're as young as we are, just coming out of college and participating in the military, we don't claim to know enough, and so we're dependent upon older, wiser folks to make good decisions. The Vietnam War was going on when I got through pilot training, as also when Peter got through college. And so I had short hair at college, but I had a good time as a private small school. I had a nice time, but already you could not take some courses in some departments, because if you were in ROTC, which I was, the department's professors felt that you couldn't be smart if you were participating in ROTC. I strongly disagree with that. I've been conservative my whole life in a sense. I like to think of myself as independent, thinking about topics, but you have to prove to me the logic of what you're thinking, etc. So critical thinking has always been part of my makeup, I would like to think. And Peter and I, as Peter stated, we took 3 years of going back and forth, and we said, well, what are the contributing factors? And to me, that's what my background was all about, is how did I get to this critical thinking process, but where's society now? What does everybody need to think about? And so between Peter and I, we structured around what I just described, the chapters. And it's fairly simple. It's only 109 pages long. But in that 109 pages, post that, we have appendices. Those appendices relate to individual chapters, so they're numbered as such. 1 A, B, C, D are appendices that refer to chapter 1. 3 A, B, C, D are appendices that apply to chapter 3. So if you're looking after you've read the book, you might go in and quickly review the chapter and then go and look for the appendices that apply. Now, not every chapter has appendices. So the numbers would be like 1 and then 3 with the individual appendices, etc. But some chapters, like I said, don't have it.
And Shemaiah, Kevin hit upon it. When you talk about critical thinking, it's the process of questioning everything. You, Kevin, and I can look at a laptop or computer, and our initial response is, man, humankind's knowledge is right there. And as far as that statement goes, that's correct. All the knowledge of the world is available at your fingertips. But notice that we stress knowledge, not wisdom. There's very little wisdom in that laptop. Even to include, I would put forth as an argument, I would put forth that Claudine and Gemini and Grok and all of these super foundational, fundamental
artificial intelligence
compilations of artificial intelligence don't have much wisdom. We have seen repeatedly the identification of various sets of questions that lead to completely opposite answers out of Grok and Claudine and Gemini. So it's learning. Your response might be, well, Pete, don't be so critical. It's learning. It's developing. It's going to teach itself. That one side of that is very scary. The other side of that is, you're right, it will teach itself. But that means we have to do our job and not accept at face value whatever we hear, whatever we read. Oh, I'm an automaton. Well, if that's what you said, it must be true. And don't approach and not approach anything with critical thought.
The good example of what Peter's talking about that I look back on my history, if you remember calculators, people would go through and they do, some formula process. They put it in and say, here's the number. Well, that's okay if mathematically they understood it. But like, I can do some math in my head, and I'm sure Peter can too, and it's kind of fun to have that skill. But some people cannot do that. And so when they do something in a calculator, they've got no perception about whether or not that possibly can be wrong or not. Whereas if you can do math in your head, because you've learned the basics, et cetera, pretty well, and you've got a facile mind, you can say, that can't be the right answer, or I don't expect it to be the right answer, and you can check it again and more carefully put the input in. And so you've got to have a sense of whether something should be right or should be wrong, and then test it. And when a famous person who we are not big fans of, Fauci, said, follow the science, he meant follow the science like the experts that are scientists, and whatever they tell you is right. Well, the nature of science is it never proves anything correct. What it proves is something is not wrong to this point in time with the knowledge that we have. As a function of that, you have to always critically think. You have to always question everything. And in doing so, Einstein had great, improvements to previous historical process with the theory of relativity. But since then, it's gone past that point. And there's been some new concepts in physics beyond Einstein. Well, that's because you build on what appears to be correct, but there's nuances. We have good information, but it's not purely correct. And so critical thinking, well applied by intelligent people, having discourse and not being offended by people's statements, questioning so that our wisdom develops. And the example of not being offended, let's take a look at statues. For the past number of years, people have said that represents an ugly time in our society, such that we want to erase that so it's not a bad memory. Well, statues serve more than one purpose. They're historical. History isn't about mankind behaving well throughout history. We've got people that did some things well in the midst of not doing some things well. Think about this Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal. Well, when did we really reach a stat where we could be proud of our country and say that we've really made progress in that regard? Well, the Civil Rights in '64 Act, and then the election of our first black president, that took a lot of not just one segment of society voting someone in. It took a lot of people from many different cultures, many different aspects, creating the critical mass to vote Obama into office. So
you can clearly see, Shemaiah, that history and its understanding what really happened has been hijacked. It's been taken away. It's George Orwell. Let's erase the past. If we control the past, we control the present. We define what happened in the past. And if we control the present, we control the future. You don't know anything that you know. It's gone. We tell you what to know. Hijacked. Same thing for education. Oh, education has been the foundation of every civilization for thousands of years. Albeit, yes, for the elite, but civilizations grew because education grew. Well, what has happened in recent decades? Education has been hijacked to teach to the test. No child left behind. Spout back the facts. Forget mastering a skill. You got 2 weeks, and then we move you on to the next grade. You get another 2 weeks, we move you on to the next grade. Well, I don't really know. That doesn't matter. Move on. That's not education. That's indoctrination. And there's a massive difference. And we believe, and you'll see this in the book, that indoctrination has taken over the educational industry. And the ability to really freely think critically and to check, and you wouldn't have all of these students get up and leave a visiting professor who wants to share ideas critically and walk out of the class, hold up bizarre signs with vulgarities on them, and do that repeatedly, week after week after week at any institution you want to mention. That's hijacked. That leads into religion, faith, and values. My gosh, if you don't have a value system, if you don't have eternal truths, if you don't have something that guides you every day when you get up, some understanding of where you fit in the cosmos of the fabric of society, you're like Nietzsche. You're in a corner. You're a nihilist. You have no faith system. You have meaninglessness as your foundation. And if that's the case, presto changeo. What happened the last 20 years? Identity politics. I'm going to tell you what my identity is because I don't feel I have any identity. I'm going to create mine. And you better believe it, or I think you're terrible. I think you're wrong. I'm not going to talk to you. And hence, we've got a whole decade, multiple decades of people smashing verbally into your face, into your mind, what they think is right, when in fact they haven't thought critically either.
Once again, this is on Refocus Radio and talking to our two special guests today, Kevin and Peter. I want to kind of pick up what you said on artificial intelligence, and I want to make a comment on that, and that is a very popular medium tool that people are using in business and creative worlds. But to your point, artificial intelligence, the key, artificial, is only as good as the data is being fed to it. So you cannot just take it as golden rule, like, okay, it told me this, so therefore it must be correct. There are times where, even if you look at self-driving cars today, there are stories of cars getting confused on the road. They can't really adapt like a human can adapt when there's a flooded road area. There's certain things when construction is going, they might get confused. They might just stall or stop, or it might, I've seen a car get pulled over by, our self-driving car get pulled over by a cop. So my point is, the humanness is key. In critical thinking, it starts with using your brain, using your experience.
It requires education. It's not this thing like Peter said of just moving someone ahead because, you age-wise, you've just finished one grade, now move up to the next. We're not saying that it's not difficult for a child not to be able to move up, but we're not doing them a favor if we move them up when they haven't learned what they're supposed to learn. If they're going to be able to critically think as an adult and function in society, then they need to be able to learn how to critically think, and that's how to think. You think critically. You question everything. So one thing I'd like to say about the artificial intelligence that goes along with the calculator example is I'm going to shout out to Elon Musk. Elon Musk says that in Grok, his purpose is absolute truth. Now, Claude and Gemini and ChatGPT, they initially in their algorithms wanted results to reflect certain conditions. And so they trained their algorithms and wrote their algorithms so that they would shade what the answer was. It was not accurate. It was, in fact, therefore wrong. Where in history, we're not looking for convenience. We're not looking for something that makes us feel good. We're looking for understanding. We don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past. So if you understand history and the mistakes, we have the opportunity to learn and then not repeat the mistakes. So artificial intelligence is the same analogy I gave about calculators, except for now you really have to apply critical thinking, because there is no way to, and artificial general intelligence really is upon us right now. The next thing is artificial superintelligence. But it's going to be amazing what it does. But we need to control it as opposed to letting it control us.
We're going to need to know, if it only relies upon our gut and our ability to think critically, we're going to need to know what's right, what is correct, and not situational. And we both grew up in a situational ethics in time. If it feels good, do it. I'm not hurting you. What's your problem? On and on and on. And that we gradually found was offensive to us. I'll give you a very basic example, Shemaiah, that it goes back to a professor, actually a coach at Cal Poly. And in 1989, he gave a speech. He gave this speech often. He was a softball and a baseball coach. And he said, let's figure out what are the dimensions of a baseball plate. The baseball plate are these dimensions. They have not changed since 1950. We do not change the dimensions of the plate to have bad pitchers become good pitchers, and vice versa. We have a plate, we have pitching capacity, and we have strikes and balls and outs. So those are the rules of that set of a game. And we don't adjust. We don't show up. Oh, show up, here's an award. Be present on the sideline, here's an award. No, there are rights and wrongs. You get the strike or you don't, and we don't modify the rules mid-game to allow for people to feel better or worse about their performance. And he applied that to marriage, he applied that to work relationships, he applied that to everything in his life.
Yeah.
And it's true. That's where we come with those terms, the humankind, the eternal truths, the right, the golden rule, if you will. And every religion has a golden rule of some shape or form, the similarity of do unto others what you'd have them do unto you. Don't be honest and forthright. Show up. All of these things are things that were learned 5,000 years ago and 5 minutes ago.
And to that point, we did not mention in the book, we use quotes. And the quotes go back millennia. They go back to Plato, Socrates, and we've got a appendices that I think is very important. That is full of a lot of quotes that are used, a few individually on each chapter, that could be used during a chapter, but we find that most of the chapters have a few quotes at the end of the chapter, and it's to really bring home that the issues that we're trying to present to people are not new. We haven't come up with new ideas. We've tried to assemble the big picture. People have gotten away and they're focusing on minutia as opposed to the forest and the trees. Let's look at the forest, folks. Let's see the big picture. And if we do that successfully, we can identify the building blocks. We can apply them properly. We can assist people to come to good conclusions. If we want our society to thrive, well, it goes back to what our founders created. All men are created equal and the right to pursue, happiness, etc. So in that process, the Constitution then came to be post the success of the Revolutionary War. And in writing the Constitution, they had 13 colonies that were not of all the same cultural aspect. And so were they able to put everything right away, reflecting the aspirational nature of the Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal? No. Some of the southern countries still had slavery. It was wrong. But they couldn't assemble the colonies together in one unit without giving a temporary compromise. It was a long-term temporary. It took 100 years, a little bit less than 100 years before the Civil War really addressed the issue and made people equal. And after that, it took almost another 100 years before the Civil Rights Act was passed. So we are here for a nanosecond in the history of mankind, in the history of the world. And as a function of that, one of the key aspects that I believe in the book points out is Rousseau and the social contract. What does the social contract say? It says that if you don't want to live under a Darwinistic society where, the biggest and baddest guy gets to dictate, then you want to live in a society that's got rules, regulations, laws. And for the protection of those rules, laws, regulations, you are entering into a contract. The contract, therefore, says is two-sided. I want protection under those rules, laws, and regulations. But if I get the protection, then I've got a responsibility to behave properly within that society, under those rules, laws, regulations. Now, does that mean that society is perfect at that point in time? No, it does not. It's taken us 200 years to get better and better. That's evolution of governing. So in 200 years, 250 years now, we've improved over a period of time, but there's still improvements to make. Well, what are those? Those are mechanisms within the Constitution that allow us to say, if you want to change something, you have to go jump through these hoops. So it's not easy. That means we're not making willy-nilly changes that can screw things up. It means you've got to get critical mass. It means you've got to jump through a bunch of hoops, and it's going to take a while to get there. Well, that's all beneficial in the long term of trying to keep something that's significantly on track, a significantly good country, freedom of speech being a fundamental. It's being eroded in Europe. And in the United States, they were working at eroding it. And there's forces that still want to.
And
it's critical to critical thinking.
That is one of the toughest things we had to confront writing this book, is that reality can be one thing, and it can run counter to what we would like to have happen, what we'd like to exist. And, something as simple as different capacities and different skill sets provide different results for different people. And people as Solzhenitsyn, who was a product of the Gulag under communism, I simply said, I'll quote it to you, human beings are born with different capacities. If they are free, they are not equal. If they are equal, they are not free. And then oppositional to him is Charlie Munger, who co-founded Berkshire Hathaway, and he was very clear. I'd rather deal with inequality in life for some. And this is terrible. We want everybody treated fairly is one thing. Proper compensation and return, that's another discussion. But at the end of the day, we all have different skill sets, and some achieve more than others. And he simply said, a functioning capitalist system has provided that. I'd rather have that than poverty for all, which is a socialism or communist system. And I'll give you one more fact. Marx and Engels were two young men who never worked a day in their life, who wrote a book that preached to the world how great the communist system was, not having a clue as to what they were really saying.
Now, they never participated in business.
They never participated in capitalism. Those are the critical thoughts that need to be applied, because that was 90 to 100 years of total pain for hundreds of millions of people.
Yeah, and on top of that, if you look at communism, look at the millions and millions of people. I think it was over 10 million people died under Stalin, and I think under 40 million people died under Mao. And in a communist system, what is it? It's one-party system. Well, the one-party system, who joins the party? Within the party, if you're a member of the party and you move up and get promoted, etc., you get perks. Well, that's the improved lifestyle. So everybody else is demoted to, you're a common person in that thing, and everybody's got to contribute and give, but there's no rewards for extra efforts in that kind of process. Well, incentive and motivation systems are key. We have litmus tests that we think people ought to look at. If they want to apply some new rule, law, policy, regulation process, they need to test it with litmus tests. The first one is it consistent? Can we apply this one here? And is there any other things that conflict with this? If they conflict, this isn't such a great answer. And maybe the other one isn't either. So let's talk about them in connection so we find a sense of consistency. Then the next one is, okay, if we think we found a solution, how sustainable is it? Is it sustainable for the long term? Well, if it is sustainable for the long term, it probably should put in place the proper incentive and motivation system that people respond to, so that they're motivated to behave properly within society. And so within the process, we need to understand that the economic system serves at the convenience of the political system. That's a pregnant phrase. If we understand that, that means the political system can ruin an economic system, while communism defines ruining an economic system. It is a singular system. There's no competition. The centrally planned thing says, we'll build a car. Well, how many Russian cars have been popular since the 1920s when Russia took over? The U.S. has gone through all kinds of different cars. Some car makers have thrived. Some have been successful. Some have gone into bankruptcy. Some other things. But competition is the key. Well, what's competition? It's part of capitalism. It's not part of communism. So if we apply these litmus tests and incentive and motivation systems, sustainability, consistency, and these things are absolutely critical to what we need to use as critical thinking when we're thinking about a change we want to make. We need to apply these litmus tests to determine whether or not it's working. So that's just one thing I wanted to that I thought was really important and we needed to cover.
Once again, this is Refocus Radio, watching us online, talking to our two special guests today, talking to Kevin and Peter. I know we are flat out of time, but I want to ask one question for you both. You both can share your answer with this, and this would be my last question, make this full circle. When you think about the young generation, they are into AI, they're into tech, they're into all these social media platforms, they're into a lot of things that maybe old school, maybe not really interested as much. But for the sake of conversation, the fundamental foundation of what we're talking about morale, clarity. That's what I'm getting. When you can talk to a young person, we talk about Socrates, we talk about historic ancient wisdom, know thyself, examine life, all that. What will be your message to young people to really start focusing on in their own personal life, outside all the noise that they see on the news and they see in culture? Was one thing that they can zoom in on after this?
For the future, they can't take shortcuts. It's a long methodology of education to develop one's mind. And it doesn't need to be public education. It can be self-education. And education continues forever. But it's education continually being applied and critical thinking used within the process of education, no shortcuts.
And I would simply add that they should think carefully about everything that's presented to them and what they are told is fact. Use their own logic and investigatory powers to question, investigate, listen, and then speak. They are terrific people who have brains God gave them. They need to apply that and not accept as rote knowledge spouted out from a computer as fact, when indeed it may not be fact.
I appreciate that. And with that said, definitely go to the website. It's HijackedOurRepublic.com and definitely get a copy of the book today. And to you both, I want to say, like always, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Shemaiah, for having us.
I appreciate it very much.
We enjoyed the interview.